Okay, I think what I'm going to use today is going to be the small technical pens. I have a 0.1. This is a fairly small one, but it's not the smallest. And I'm going to use that to start doing the details. Because I think what I'd like to do with this is color this with markers later. And what I like to do, because I happen to have a good printer, is to scan it into the computer after I finished inking it, and then print out another copy so I can color that. That way if I make any mistakes when coloring it, I haven't ruined the original. I also found that these markers unfortunately don't do real well with my coloring pens. They end up smearing, but I like how they ink. So I'm going to start with the small details. And we're going to go with small, thin lines. And we're going to build up some of the areas so it has a little bit of line weight, so it isn't too flat. And this is the part that you don't want to rush. It's okay, go nice and slow, so your hand doesn't shake. But again, you don't want to only do what you see on the page. It's okay to add some new stuff. We can do chin real quick. And the benefit of using a real tiny pen is you get some really nice detail lines, and you can go back and make some of those lines a little bit thicker to give it some line weight. If you use a real thick pen from the very beginning, you're kind of trapped in the type of lines you're going to have. You'll end up with some really thick lines, and that can end up looking a little cartoony or coloring book, which is okay, but that's not what I'm trying to do today. And if you want to, you can add some more fur marks. Make it a little bit more realistic looking. And again, you know, there's lots of different ways to ink. If you wanted it to look more like a page in a comic book, you'd want to have real heavy black shadows. But I'm not going to go for that this time. That'll be another video. Right. And then we're going to do the eyes. Eyes are usually pretty important. It's one of the things that people look at the most, so you want to make some good detail in there. And if you mess up, that's alright, because it can either be fixed in the computer or we've got some white ink. If you can't find any white ink at your art store, you can just use some white acrylic paint. Sometimes it takes a few coats so the ink doesn't bleed through, but that's alright. Got some slight eyebrows there. And as you see, I kind of spin the paper around to get better angles. Something you do have to look out for when you are inking is called feathering. Feathering is when your ink basically just goes beyond the line you kind of draw. And some paper is really bad about that. That's the other reason I don't really use sketchbook paper very often, is it does have a tendency to feather really bad. But different pens will do different things. You just have to experiment around and see what works for you. A little bit of fur in here. As you see, sometimes I don't follow exactly what's in my red pencil lines here. You might also be wondering why my lines are red. What I like to do is when I've inked, instead of inking over my original pencils, if I ink over just red lines, I can scan it into Photoshop and then go into channels and I'll show you how to do that in another video, and then erase all the red lines. So it just makes it a lot cleaner and easier to deal with later on. I'm going to go over here and do the back leg. And you see I'm kind of only doing the outline. In this case it's because I want to have a real minimalistic kind of look to it. But I've seen some really awesome pen and ink drawings out there that use a lot of lines to make texture and shadow. And that can be pretty nifty too. Donna Barr is really good at that. You should check out her work. She's got an account on DeviantArt too. And I think I'm going to make this line here a little bit thicker, but I'm going to use another pen to make it a little bit easier on myself. The one bad thing about using such a tiny pen is it does take a little bit longer. And I get kind of impatient, to be honest. I like to rush through if I can. And get to the coloring part, which is really one of my favorites. Get some claws in there. And I'm not going to make you watch me ink this entire thing because that would get kind of boring, but I'll show you what I mean by using another pen. So again, this was the 0.1. So now I'm going to move up to a 0.5. I also have a 0.3 around here somewhere, but we're going to use the 5. And I'm going to kind of trail it in there. Thicken up this line just a bit. But I'm not going to go all the way through. I'm just going to thicken up the lines a little bit here and there to give a little bit more contrast in places. Again, the thicker lines help some areas come forward, make sure that it looks like it's in front of some of the other parts. I'm going to re-emphasize the nose here. Just kind of, a lot of this is practice, and the more you do it, the more confident you'll get with it, and the easier the decision making will become. Sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out, well, where should I put those thicker lines, and really just gotta practice. Kill a whole bunch of paper.